Hi, I'm Brian Crombie, and we're going to be talking on The Brian Crombie Show. We're going to be talking about politics, arts, business, and social issues on The Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. Good evening and welcome to the Brian Crombie Hour on Canada One TV. So one of the most fascinating things about this gig of mine, having a radio show and an internet TV show, is that I run into some people that have got really interesting jobs and different lifestyles and different careers and different attitudes and opinions. And I ran across someone by the name of Karine Bedard, who is a sex-positive coach. And I just found that kind of interesting and wanted to learn more about it. And so I wanted to bring her on the show and chat with her a little bit about what a sex-positive coach is all about and what we all can learn from her. So Karine, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Brian. It's
Thank
great.
you for coming. So what that blank is a sex-positive coach?
Well, the full title is Empowerment and Sex-Positive Relationship Coach.
Empowerment and
sex-positive
relationship coach. Okay.
So ultimately, I'm a relationship designer, and I help.
A relationship designer.
Yeah. So I help people create the relationships that they really desire, and make their fantasies come true, and just kind of the all-encompassing thing. So the sex-positive part is really about removing the stigma that comes with so much shame around sex in our culture.
Why do you think there's so much shame associated with sex?
I mean, sex has always been one of those shameful things, like the scarlet letter, the whore, and it's just the slut shaming. It's just always a thing. I think, I talk a lot about the religious and social programming that we have in our society that really informs our relationships and informs how we live and how we view the world.
Right.
And so I really want to change the script on relationships and how we see relationships. And so years ago, I like to tell the story that I was a Bible school graduate turned Playboy enthusiast.
A Bible school graduate turned Playboy enthusiast. Yeah. Okay, tell me this story. This is interesting.
So I grew up very fundamentalist Christian.
Okay.
And so, of course, sex was not something you really talked about
Were
very
you allowed
much.
to dance, I thought, in some...
Yeah, so I wasn't Baptist, although every time I lived in the U.S., my dad was military, so every time I lived in the U.S., I went to a Baptist church, and then in Canada, I went to a Brethren assembly, so, like head coverings, everything. I mean, hardcore fundamentalist. So yeah, dancing wasn't really a thing. I had a water station at my wedding, not a bar, like a water station. So there was no drinking or dancing. Well, there was dancing, but to Christian music. Anyways, that's besides the point. But I went to Bible school, and again, you don't think of relationships in terms of sexuality at all. Like, that's not really what you think about. You think about lots
marriage,
of having kids, all different things. Like sort of. This person, are they like, righteous and godly people and da-da-da-da. You don't think so much about your connection or it just relationship skills. Like, you're not taught, as women we're taught to be submissive, right? And so it's not like you think through a lot of things. Like, I was going to be a godly wife and I was going to be, da-da-da.
So how did this become a Playboy enthusiast?
So that's a great question. So like I said, I was a Bible school graduate. And so my husband went through this journey, like this quest, if you will, of trying to figure out if he just had some questions that he'd always wanted to answer if he was going to live 100%, And so a couple years later, he basically came to me and told me that he didn't believe anymore. He had deconverted, and I was like, what? That's a thing? Like, I didn't even know. Like, why would you Why would you do? Yeah, like it just didn't make any sense to me. But that did get the journey started in terms of like opened up our communication so much, and just like I was inquiring, and he just really helped answer a lot of questions because he had done a lot of research. So all that to say that we rebuilt our worldview from the ground up. And one of the things that I was always taught is that, you know, the sex industry or sex basically is just people who desire sex and all that are just the worst of the worst, right? Like
Sex addicts.
Yeah, or, you know, porn is terrible and blah, 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 blah. It was like the worst possible thing you could do. And sex outside of marriage is terrible, right? Because sex is the glue that holds you together in a marriage, all that kind of stuff. This is what I was taught, of course. So I think like what I decided was I'm going to go find the worst of the worst and listen to them and find out if the world is such a bad place, right? Because that's what I'd been taught. So if my husband's like leaving the faith, like I have to find out like if that world out there is so bad, right? Okay. So we had Sirius Radio at the time, and they had Playboy Radio and Sirius Radio back then. So I listened to Playboy Radio like 24/7.
You listened to Playboy Radio 24/7?
24/7. I did sleep.
What was on Playboy Radio?
Like all kinds of things. I was shocked. But what I discovered is that these were my people. Like, it was such a like, what? This world is full of intelligent people. They were intelligent. They loved who they were. They were consensual. They were empowered. They were completely authentic. They knew who they were, and they weren't afraid. They could hold conversations. They just had true connections with each other, like the talks and the interviews and the everything. And I was blown away. I was like, okay, this is not what I've been taught at all. And I was like, this is so beautiful, and just started to hear a lot of sex positivity. So all of a sudden sex was no longer shameful. Sex was this beautiful thing, and to honor yourself, and you could honor others through this, and your pleasure was a beautiful thing. And I was like, what? No. And so there was like all kinds of like educational shows and things like that. And then one day I came across a show called Swing with Michael and Holly, and I was like, what is this? And they were talking. There was a married couple. She was bi. She had been Mormon. So I was like, that piqued my interest. She was Mormon, and then she had left her faith and got remarried. And she was bisexual, and he was allowing her to explore that side of herself. And so they were like allowing each other to explore sexually with other couples and other people. And I was like, what?
What's going on?
Like, what is this? This is a thing? I had no idea this existed. So that was not the part that intrigued me the most. It was the way that they talked with each other about it.
Which is this sex positivity.
Yeah, it was like they were so like, they were honoring each other and so celebratory about each other's experiences and happy for each other, and they talked openly about it, and they rejoiced, and they were like talking about all the fun that they have together and the community and just the connection that they had with other people. And I was like, what is this? You know, like, what is this? This is crazy. And so I remember saying to my husband, I was like, I heard this crazy thing today, like what? And so it got me on a quest. And I started listening to all kinds of podcasts about swinging, and I was like, what? I could never do that. Like, that's crazy, you know? But the more I got to listening to it, the more beautiful it was, and the more it was about the community, and just like, wow, this is kind of cool. So
that's interesting. So, you know, my impression, and I know nothing about what we're talking about. No, I don't. But my impression about swinging is that it was all about the sex. You're saying it wasn't about the sex, it was about the community?
Yeah, there's so much about the community. And so my mission is to normalize ethical non-monogamy on a grand scale.
Your mission is what?
To normalize ethical non-monogamy. So you've heard of monogamy.
Yep.
Then there's non-monogamy, which is often cheating.
Right.
So ethical non-monogamy is the ethical version, where there's consensual non-monogamy, honest communication, no lies, no going behind each other's back. It's all out in the open, it's consensual, it's beautiful, it's shared, it's something you do together, it's something that brings you closer together.
And you want to normalize this.
Yes.
But like, doesn't that lead to like huge jealousies?
Well, it could, but what I do is I make sure that people are in a healthy relationship place before they enter into this world. Because I'll tell you, I have not met people with better relationships than I have in this world. Like multiple married people that are having the most amazing relationships. And it's because when you're in this world, to be successful in this world, you are able to not expect your partner to be everything for you. You rejoice in their successes, their joys, their pleasure. So there's this thing called compersion.
Compersion. What is compersion?
So compersion would be the opposite of jealousy. So really, if I have compersion,
you're happy that
yeah.
someone's
So
stuck with someone
so
else.
if I see my partner enjoying themselves or getting attention from someone else, or just getting to enjoy something that they want, or enjoy a fantasy that they've had, I have joy for them in watching that or knowing that they're having a good time, and it fills me with joy rather than fear of losing them.
Making love to someone is a very intimate, personal experience, and you form emotional connections. Can you actually share that with more than one person?
You can, absolutely. I think we have this very limited sort of scarcity mindset when it comes to love in general. So we think of it as a pie, like once you're out of love, you're out of love. But if you look at any parent, there's not a shortage of love. You can have many children and love them all equally. And just because you have another child doesn't mean you can't love them.
So you're
the
saying
next
love for a lover can be comparable to love for a child?
It absolutely can.
You can have more than one, two, or three?
Yes. Yes, and it's so hard to understand that because we're not taught that, right? We're not taught that. We're taught that love is very
So you don't
finite.
think it's not natural to have monogamy? This is something we're taught?
Yeah, I think so,
Really?
definitely. I think, like Chris Ryan has a book called Sex at Dawn, and he really talks about just kind of how monogamy was not necessarily in the animal world, and there's a lot of examples where monogamy is actually not practiced, and so if you look at all the people cheating in marriage, like if you look at the percentage, it's a very high percentage, and it's not for no reason. And it's not that you have to be non-monogamous. I am 100% supportive of monogamy. I think monogamy is wonderful. I think there's a lot of things and thinking around monogamy that can be toxic and that are very dangerous for our relationships, which is evidenced by the fact that marriages don't last.
Right.
Relationships don't last.
So this toxic thing is what? The jealousy or what?
Jealousy comes from fears. Jealousy just points out a deeper issue. So jealousy is just a fear of losing someone, or a fear of not being enough, or a fear of someone, them liking someone else more than you. So it's just like, it comes from fear. But when you can let go of that, when you heal those parts of yourself, and you're the point where you see that, someone else is not a competition to you. Nobody can be you. There's a kind of a good example, like if you like cheese, like what's your favorite kind of cheese?
Brie.
Brie. Okay. And do you like cheddar cheese?
Yes.
Okay. But how can you like cheddar if you like brie?
They're cheeses. They're not spouses
Stick with
or
me
lovers.
stick with me for a second though. Like how can you like cheddar and brie? They're totally different.
Yeah, but the difference is brie is blonde and cheddar's red.
Okay. So but all cheeses have their own uniqueness. Like, just because you like cheddar doesn't mean that you can't like brie, that you like it any less, because it's not the same.
You're not forming a intimate personal relationship with
No,
cheese.
but
I
let's
understand
just
your kid's analogy better.
Yeah, but let's just use that as an example, is that each person is unique,
Yeah.
and each person brings something completely different to you. Like, we can have multiple friends, right? So we're taught that sex and love are they're connected,
Yeah.
but they can be mutually exclusive. So sometimes I talk about sex as one circle and love is another circle.
Yeah.
And you can connect those circles and have a beautiful connected, love making. But you can also have sex for sex and love for love, and the two don't have to define each other. And so if you can look at it like that, sex can be something you can do for fun, even in your monogamous relationship. You can have sex fun and then love-making fun. And if you're always trying to make love, your sex is going to be very stressed and strained because it always has to have this huge expectation on it. Whereas sometimes it's just sex and it's just
about
fun.
fun.
Yeah. And so you really can separate the two, and you can ask any swinger that it definitely you can separate the two. And then there's a spectrum, right? So you can be completely disconnected and just have fun and it's just about the sex, or there's some people who only like connected sex. I'm more on that spectrum. I like connections with people, mental connections, which is sapiosexual. So I connect with the brain, and really sapiosexual.
Okay, I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, so that's where you turn on in your mind
Right,
by
okay.
people. I'm less I porn doesn't really do much for me, but a good conversation does a lot for me. So it's really interesting. Everybody's so different, and this lifestyle has all kinds of people. So one of the jobs that I have is taking new people and discovering exactly where they sit on that spectrum. So you've got swinger on one side and polyamory on the other side. And polyamory can be a very separate experience, right? You can love multiple people and have different relationships that aren't connected, right?
Right.
With each other. Swinging is done much more as a couple, typically. You have singles in there too, but typically, as far as I love working with couples and introducing them to this world.
How does someone become a coach in this area? We're going to take a break.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break and come back more with Karine Bedard in just a minute, and I'm going to ask her about how she becomes a coach in this fascinating area. Stay with us, everybody.
अगर खुशियां गिनने का मीटर होता तो साफ दिख जाता सऊदी अरब वाले असगर भाई की इतनी, दुबई में सलमान और शाहिदा बाजी की इतनी, बर्तानिया से राशिद चचा और अमेरिका वाले आसिम साहब की ना सिर्फ इतनी खुशियां बढ़ चुकी हैं बल्कि बढ़ती ही जा रही हैं। इन सब के साथ साथ दीगर पाकिस्तानी भी ढेरों खुशियां समेट रहे हैं सोनी धरती रेमिटेंस प्रोग्राम के शानदार रिवॉर्ड पॉइंट्स के साथ। तो बैंक्स और एक्सचेंज कंपनी से रकम भेजते रहिए और हासिल करते रहे रिवॉर्ड पॉइंट्स के बदले फ्री सर्विसेज, इंटरनेशनल एयर टिकट्स, टैक्स और ड्यूटी पेमेंट्स, शिनाख्ती दस्तावेजात की रिन्यूअल, इंश्योरेंस पेमेंट्स, यूटिलिटी स्टोर से खरीदारी और बहुत सारी सहूलियात। आज ही सोनी धरती ऐप डाउनलोड कीजिए और रजिस्टर हो जाइए, क्योंकि आपके दम से ही है पाकिस्तान की तरक्की और खुशहाली। सोनी धरती रेमिटेंस प्रोग्राम, हमेशा अपनों के करीब। हुकूमत पाकिस्तान, स्टेट बैंक ऑफ पाकिस्तान और मालियाती इदारों की जानिब से एक अहम कदम।
Hi, I'm Brian Crombie, and we're going to be talking on The Brian Crombie Show. We're going to be talking about politics, arts, business, and social issues on The Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. on Canada One TV. It's an interesting conversation we're having tonight with Karine Bedard, who is a sex-positive relationship coach. And I had never heard of someone being such a coach. And so it's interesting, and we've been talking about how Karine converted from being a Bible church-going individual to someone that was more open to a whole bunch of other experiences in life. And it's interesting because I think of myself as a reasonably open, progressive person. I'm a little embarrassed by this conversation, and so it's interesting that it is something that one has to think about. And so how does one become a sex-positive relationship coach? Like, do you take a course in this?
Yeah, so I took a coaching program, and in the coaching program you could choose like what your niche would be or what you wanted to do. And I looked at my journey and I thought, my journey is really about breaking free from my religious programming, breaking free from societal programming, to really get to build my own worldview and become my authentic self and just truly be who I am completely. And
being in a monogamous relationship with your husband was not who you were.
I mean, it was because it's all I knew, but then I discovered this other world, and we wanted to kind of see what it was all about, because it was very intriguing, like, how can this be?
And you're not saying this is for everyone, because you're not
No.
you're not out trying to convert people, and you're
No.
saying you still think monogamy is beautiful.
Yeah.
But you're just trying to make it more acceptable?
Yeah,
Make
to make it more,
understandable?
yeah, because a lot of people, it's so stigmatized that people literally lose their jobs if it comes out that they're
A swinger.
a swinger, which is ridiculous because that should have no relevance. And people don't understand it's consensual.
Right.
It's the most honest, safe, beautiful interaction compared to, and then you have people who are cheating all the time, and they get a slap on the wrist. Like, that doesn't even make sense, right? Like, why should I get penalized for my relationship choices? And then people are also losing their children in custody battles because people are like, oh, that's so immoral
Right.
and stuff. Yeah, and it's like, wait a second. Like, I am not an immoral person just because I choose this lifestyle. Like, I'm a good person. I truly love people. My children are grown up. I have a 20-year-old daughter who is living in Toronto and doing so well in her life, and she is a beautiful soul and caring and loving, independent, and so my children are not scarred from this. They're not like immoral and all this stuff, so I think that people just have a real
So
misconception.
your children know you're
Yes.
a sex-positive coach.
Yes.
and I presume a swinger.
Yes.
And they're okay with it.
Yeah, and they just think it's so cool that they can come to me. Like, the other day, my daughter was like, Mom, if I ever have kids, I want to be like a mom like you. And I was like, oh, she's like, most people can't be open with their parents. They can't tell them everything. They have to hide stuff from them. She goes, I never have to do that. I can tell you everything.
A lot of parents aren't sex-positive with their kids, that's for sure.
No, and I think like people are scared to be, but what it's done is it's opened up my life. I can be truly, like, I keep saying the word authentic, but being able to be authentic and not fear what other people are going to think, because you love who you are.
Right.
You've discovered that there's nothing wrong with you, and you don't have to live by society's standards in order to
Well, I guess
be okay.
the key is that you come to this conclusion yourself.
Yeah.
That these standards are religious based and may or may not be appropriate.
Yeah.
I guess what you're saying is that the animal kingdom doesn't necessarily have these standards, and while society may be culturally educating you toward them, you don't agree with them.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I'm not like disagreeing with them either, but I'm just saying,
Except me,
like,
if I'm
let's look at it, and before we make a judgment call on it, let's understand that swingers are not doing doing this just because they're hedonists. Like, it's so much more. It's about the community too. Like, it's so the first time that I went to an event, I decided to go to this event, and I was like so scared or whatever. I got there, and like 5 minutes in, I was like, the mothership has landed. These are my people.
Really?
Like, it was like instant. I feel so at home. I all of a sudden didn't have to filter anything. I could just be myself. I was completely accepted as I was. I could be sexy or not sexy. Nobody's judging you. And it's just so empowering. It's so freeing. You can just be
Who you are.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and when you go to, I was even saying this to my daughter the other day, I was like, I would feel safer if you were at a sex club than at a regular bar. Let that sink in.
Seriously?
Absolutely. Why? Absolutely. Because a sex club is so respectful. Like, the number one name of the game is respect, or you're not going to survive in this world. And it's a very women, I'm going to say women-centric world, as opposed to like the patriarchal world, which can sometimes sexualize women but not respect them. This is an environment where the women are feeling sexual and empowered by that and want that because that's who they've chosen to be. And then the men honor that and respect it. And they ask for consent. They don't just grope people without having permission. You don't have to worry about being groped and touched and things like that. And the people who are like that don't last very long in this world. They get called out.
But going back to sort of basic, one of the things is that society, I think a lot of the time, says that females can't look for sex and enjoy sex. And what you're saying is,
absolutely, the women run the show. The women are, a lot of times, it's the women that got them into this world. I was one of those, like. I discovered it and I was like, oh, like sounds so freeing and so cool and so beautiful and like really scary because I have no idea what it's all about and it's so different than everything I've ever been taught. But like, it's intriguing to me. And what I got from the Playboy radio and the conversations they had was just like, they could just be themselves and they were so honored for being themselves. And that was celebrated, right? Instead of like, you have to conform, you have to fit in a box.
I had this interesting debate once with some people, and I would like to ask you what you think about it. It was with a gentleman that it was with two gentlemen that were gay, and one of them said, if we accept homosexuality and we accept bisexuality, we accept transsexuals, why wouldn't you accept swinging? Like it's just sort of a logical construct, and to be against people that are swingers but be okay with homosexuality is completely inconsistent. And then the other person said, no, that's completely wrong because I believe, this other person said, homosexuality and bisexuality and being a transsexual were genetic, but swinging was a choice. And if homosexuality was a choice, we wouldn't necessarily be as accepting of it, but because we believe it's genetically based, that you don't have a choice, you're just sort of born that way. That's the old Lady Gaga, song about it was born this way. Which side of that do you agree with, if any?
I think it comes down to your view of sex. Like, if you think that sex is wrong and that you shouldn't have sex just to enjoy pleasure and that somehow pleasure is inherently wrong, then you're going to have views about whether you can have sex for the pleasure of having sex in whatever form you choose to have it. So a lot of people see, and I think it's probably stems from the fact that sex can be used to hurt people so often. So
hurt people? Why hurt people?
So, I mean, how
well,
that, and how many times have you heard of infidelity, right? Like, infidelity, it's not the sex that hurts people, it's the lie, it's the dishonesty in it, right?
So that's the
so it
difference
has a
between
big impact.
Ethical polyamory and cheating.
Yeah, because when you do this, you choose to do it together. It's something that you've both decided you want to explore something new, and you don't just start off going, okay, I'm going to go have sex with other people. Like, there's a little bit of a process, you know? So some people literally just go to a sex club and they're voyeurs. And a voyeur is someone who just likes to be in that environment and watch. And that's their pleasure, is watching. They get off on that. And then they take each other home and they enjoy that. Or they just enjoy each other at the club.
Right.
That's all they want. They don't want to interact sexually with other people. 100% okay. They're still a part of that community. Totally okay. You never have to interact
These
with
places
them.
exist in Toronto?
There's many, actually.
Really?
There's probably 4 or 5. There was 5 before COVID, and one
Yeah, I can
closed
imagine
down.
they'd be a little bit challenged with COVID.
Yeah.
Wearing the mask.
Yeah, so I mean, the X Club, for instance, is an amazing club, and the owner there is fabulous. It's just such a cool environment and classy, very nice, premier club. And it's called a social club, too, because really it's about, like, people think, you know, oh my God, a sex club, you walk in and there's just sex everywhere. No, not at all. There is a dance floor and a bar, and that's what you have. And people dress sexy and dancing and having a great time and hugging and just being so open and comfortable around each other. And it's like a family. You walk in, you're like, oh my gosh, hey, how's it going? And you look forward to seeing your friends, and it's just like it's your tribe, it's your people. It's just so unifying. And then there's a back area that is not there. Single men, like men without their partners, are not allowed back there. They can't go back.
You have to have a partner.
You have to have a partner if you're a man. So there's another safety thing right there.
Can go.
Single female can go. Single man can go if he's accompanied by a single female or a couple brings him in. So no single men lurking around. Okay? There's private rooms, or there's rooms with windows, if you'd like. There is a kink room, so there's a dungeon now at X Club that's new. There was a renovation. And then there is like a room that you can't go back there unless you're also naked. So it's not like you can just walk around with your clothes on and whatever. But you can walk back there and you can observe. There's towels, there's lockers, everything. You sign in, you get your number, everything. It's just, and it's clean, and there's fresh towels all the time, and there's sanitizer, and there's condoms and everything. And there's people monitoring. Like, there's not just random touching or this or that. That's not allowed. So you get to go explore whatever level of things you want to do, and it's all...
It sounds so different than my vision of what a sex club would be. How do you become a sex-positive relationship coach? You actually took a certification or a course.
So, no, like I said, then you get to choose your niche or whatever. And what I have always been very good at is communicating and introducing people to this beautiful world that I absolutely love.
And so you sit down with couples and
talk
through this process.
Yeah, so I did a coaching process. So like last time I talked to you about my Breaking Free program. So Breaking Free is kind of my method. So that my coaching is my toolkit, and I can take people like through this process of empowerment to make sure that they're in a good place and they're open and they're thinking and their beliefs are lined up to be able to be comfortable in this world, because not everybody can.
Would be comfortable.
A lot of times there's certain beliefs that we have that would be like, no, I don't think I could ever do that. But if you work through those beliefs, it's like, oh, yeah, now I have the freedom and the comfort level to be able to even consider exploring that. So what I do is I work with couples who are interested, and I have these couples weekends, and it's like intimacy building, connection, and really getting to know what they desire, and just getting them to tap into their fantasies and desires and say, that's okay. You can actually talk about that and create a safe space for them to talk about it and get to know what they really want.
I think a lot of people have dreams, fantasies,
Oh, yeah.
but aren't ever interested in it coming true.
And some might just keep it within themselves. And during that weekend, I would go, okay, so based on what we've talked about, this is just something you guys want to do within yourself. And you can do all kinds of things to spice up your own sex life. Or if you're ready, you can come into this world. You can just dip your toes into this world. There's no harm. I'm going to come with you.
If people want
introduce
to reach out to you and and access your services, ask you about coaching, stuff like that, how do they do that?
They can reach me at on Instagram at Karine Bedard Coaching with a K. And I have a website as well, karinebedardcoaching.com. But I have a free gift to offer your audience.
Okay.
So if they go to my Instagram and they private message me and write Brian Crombie free gift, then I will send them a free gift, the secret to having a healthy, thriving relationship.
Which is what, a book?
It is not a book. It is a PDF. It is a short story book.
The secret to having
To having healthy, thriving relationships.
a healthy, thriving relationship.
So, and if you have a healthy, thriving relationship, then you have the basis to consider joining this world. And literally, what I want everybody to know is that this is a place of community. Everybody wants a tribe. Everyone wants to belong. And sometimes you feel like you don't fit in the box, and you don't want to fit in the box, and you don't fit like maybe monogamy just isn't quite for you, but you don't want to cheat. Like that's not in your morals. Well, there is options for you if you both are sex positive. If you both can have open minds, I can help you. I can take you there.
Why is polygamy illegal and polyamory or sex clubs are okay?
Polygamy is marriage between more than one person, and again, it comes down to social programming, right? It's like so. The stigma around sex and sex before marriage, like how can you share people or whatever, and then the Mormons are the ones who typically were polygamists,
Yeah.
so multiple wives, and the States is a very Christian, country.
Yeah.
I'd say culturally Christian country, but so those things are very specific, and so there's a lot of laws about not having more than one spouse, and so that is changing. In some states it's now legal, and in some places in Canada it's now legal, and it's now legal. There's been like court cases where like three, like a throuple, so three
Throuple.
so three polyamorous people can all be considered parents of one child and have the same legal rights. So that was
Really?
that was something that's
So
happened.
I interviewed a fascinating professor that investigated a whole bunch of issues associated with sex and prostitution and slut shaming and things like this, and did a bunch of films from University in Atlantic, Canada. And she had a similar attitude to you. She was brought up in a Christian, a right-wing fundamentalist Christian household. And even as a professor, she was, really, she would describe it straight-laced. But she went out and she interviewed a bunch of sex workers, and that included people that were prostitutes, but also people that were strippers, and then she also ended up interviewing a bunch of people that were involved in group sex, sex clubs. And it's interesting because her conclusion in the end was that we've always had sex. Sex has been around since the start of humanity, start of animals, whatever, and that it's this patriarchal society that has created all of these rules and inhibitions, and it was a way of men controlling females, and that if you broke that down and you allowed everyone to just be who they are, whether they want something more like you're described or not, we'd be a far better place.
Oh, absolutely.
And in that regard, she wanted to legalize prostitution, and her argument was that men have been using prostitutes for millennials, whatever the plural of a million is, and will continue to do so. But by making it illegal, what you do is subjugate it to the back roads and to pimps and unhealthy situations and things like that. And she uses examples in Amsterdam and New Zealand and places that have become more positive on that. What do you think about all that?
I think, I know a lot of sex workers personally, and they're amazing people, and they absolutely love their jobs because they're choosing it. I think if you're choosing it, you should get to do it.
But not being forced into
And
it.
if you're forced into it, absolutely not. And there's a lot of trafficking. And because it's such a stigmatized, shameful thing, people have to hide it. So again, you're creating, like when alcohol was not allowed, it was like this underground thing, and people abused it in just terrible ways. And then they would get, it's always worse. You always want what you can't have, right? I mean, you put it out in front, it's like, oh, that's not that interesting. People don't tend to abuse it.
Karine Bedard, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And sharing some of your ideas with us. And your job sounds kind of interesting.
It's very exciting.
So that's our show for tonight. And, it's interesting because I think that one of the things that I love about this gig that I've got in bringing you radio shows and TV shows is I get to meet and talk to some interesting people. And I don't have to agree with them all, but it's interesting listening to them and hearing what their stories are all about, what they believe. And being open to different people's ideas is, I think, how you learn in life and become more knowledgeable, wiser. I had someone say that what you needed to be was radically curious in life to be successful. You had to really want to know sort of the answer to why to a whole bunch of things. And so I think I understand a little bit more about who you are and what you're all about, and the fact that you're so happy and proud of your authentic self is wonderful. So I don't know, but it was interesting. Thanks for joining us. Good night, everybody.